Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm the Takanome, and welcome to my humble slices of the internet, apologies, that are my Twitch and YouTube channels. How is everyone doing today? I hope that you're having a good day today, maybe even a good week, but if that has not been the case, maybe you've been down in the dumps, or maybe you just want to unplug for a bit, unwind, and relax. Well, maybe this reading stream is just what you need. Now, tonight, I believe last Saturday, we finished reading Clockwork Twist, Book 10, Time by Emily Thompson. Normally, after we finish reading a novel, we will do poetry night, but this time we're going to do something a little different. We had a story submitted to the reading stream for the Halloween stream that was a bit long for the Halloween stream. So tonight, we're going to read that story tonight. I said tonight twice. Nevertheless, the story is Killer Kitteh Christmas by Sean B. Clavin. Now, you may be asking yourself, Taka, have we heard of this name before? I don't think we've had this author on here before, and you're correct. We have not had this author on the reading stream before. You can say this is more of a inaugural read from this author. And now I could hear the next question. Taka, who is Sean B. Clavin? Well, allow me the opportunity to read her bio. Born in southern Africa, Sean B. Clavin resides in Johannesburg, where she grew up with a vivid imagination and has been writing for as long as she can remember. When she was not immersing herself in books, she created her own worlds, both by herself and with her friends. After her sister immigrated in 2017, Sean wrote and published her first book and has been on an amazing journey ever since. Known as the international best-selling, award-winning author of horrific old-school terror, Sean B. Clavin brings back a nostalgic telling of creepy tales. A couple of her more well-known works are Buried and the Asylum series. When not terrorizing her fans as if she was handing out candy on Halloween, Sean indulges in diamond art painting, collecting Funko Pop figures, building 3D puzzles, and enjoying Star Wars and Harry Potter. That is our author for tonight's reading. As always, before the reading stream, we try to give news and updates for the channel and the stream itself. And I believe the most obvious news update for this stream, as longtime viewers or maybe even new time viewers of the stream, or recently new time viewers of the stream may notice, is that the reading stream looks a little different this time. We still have our same background back there, which honestly is subject to change once I find a decent substitute. But you will notice that our little ticker tape at the bottom is no longer a scrolling, somewhat blurry stream of text. It is now a nice, crisp, and I dare say advanced little ticker tape that does not scroll but yet fade in and out with messages such as, for example, thank you for joining this reading stream, because I really do appreciate all the support that you give this channel and this stream. You'll also notice on the left-hand side is a little window with the title of what we're reading, as well as the author's name, a picture of the book, as well as some social media links. Now, you cannot click on the links because, well, it's a picture. But if you want, consider giving the author a follow, take a look at their works, consider purchasing and supporting the author any way you can. Again, as a person who has written stories in the book before, I can say that writing stories, writing really good stories, honestly, is very difficult and is something I'm still working on for myself. But Authors, people who create these stories, put in a lot of work into the stories. It is their love and their pride. In fact, we can even ask Erudite, who is here in chat, if they agree with this sentiment that as writers and authors and storytellers, it's not enough just to tell the story, but we have to tell the story and make it engaging. And that's not always easy to do. So, if you enjoyed tonight's story, do consider following and supporting the author any way you can. And also, I would like to say hello to Erudite as well. Hello. Also, ooh, wrote Erudite. Yes, so most people will not know this until now, but I actually messaged Erudite earlier today asking for things like socials and whatnot because this is their future as well, and any future for anyone who will be featured on the reading stream from this day forward. We have changes coming to the reading stream. And remember, this is not the only change coming to this stream. Again, I would like to actually change the background. And part of that is because if you look at it, it kind of looks like AI art. Now, I found this image years ago, I believe 2022 actually, when we first started the reading stream, and I liked it. I thought it was nice. It did look a little weird, but for the reading stream at the time, I thought it was good. Now, when I look at it, I feel a bit of nostalgia. However, I do think we can have a better background image for the reading stream. So I will be keeping my eyes out for non AI, and I cannot stress this enough, looking for non AI photos. And there's a chance that I may just have to find a dusty old library, or I guess just a polished old library, and ask if I could take pictures just for the reading stream. From Erudite, I think all artists deserve gratitude and grace except for J.K. Rowling. I see J.R., but I'm assuming it's J.K. Rowling. And I largely agree with that. J.K. Rowling has written some amazing works and stories. I cannot doubt that. And I believe most people, including authors and writers, would agree that the stories are compelling. The stories are really nice. I mean, the first Harry Potter book, if I remember, came out in around 1999, 2000. I was still in not even in middle school when it first came out. And that is just the power of that story. It is a shame that J.K. Rowling has turned out the way that she turned out, though. Expected better. So, that's a couple changes. Also, another change that will be coming to the reading stream, or at least I plan for it to come to the reading stream. As you all know, there is music playing in the background when we first start up the reading stream, and I would like to find music that the reading stream can call its own. More than likely, I will have to find it online, and of course, I will be giving credit to the creator, the composer of the music, but I would like for the reading stream to have its own dedicated music. And whether it is we find a song or two or make it kind of like a radio style play, I am uncertain. These are things still going on in the background that I will try to work on in my spare time. Additionally, for the reading stream, apologies that there's a lot of news for the reading stream this time, but I will say I'm rather excited about this. But other news for the reading stream, I am still debating of separating the reading stream from well, my gaming Twitch and I will say YouTube as well, separating from the more gaming fun, well, reading is fun too, actually, the gaming side of my Twitch and YouTube profiles. I still feel that the reading stream should have its own Twitch and YouTube channels dedicated just for that, so that, for example, a lot of the followers I have on Twitch, they followed because I play certain games or so on and so forth. But I believe the reading stream should have its own channel so that it could have its own dedicated followers and I guess build up from there. Now, as I've said before, the reading stream is more of a hobby for me. I do not intend, and honestly, I don't see a need to monetize the reading stream. The point, and I have to be a little careful here because I don't want this to feel like a job, but I always felt that the point of the reading stream was to showcase stories from authors who are not quote unquote big authors or well known famous authors, but nevertheless, we are looking for nice stories that we can share. So, if you happen to be an author or a writer yourself and you're thinking, I wonder if I should give my story a try. Well, as the little ticker box says, message me on Blue Sky at the Takonome. And fortunately, I did spell my name correctly. But if we do split the reading stream from my Twitch, YouTube, more gaming side of the channel, I will be sure to let everyone know the channel will probably be created first, and I will stream on here on this channel for maybe a stream or two before switching over to the other one. But those are works in progress. Let's see here. I believe we have caught up. Well, hold on. Let's make sure. Do we have any days off this month? I do not think so. I was invited to an indie Comic Con for the 29th, but I do not think that will interfere with the reading stream schedule. I don't think so. We shall see. But as far as I can see, we do not have any days planned off for the reading stream, so we will keep going. And I believe that is everything. We have our tea ready to go that is still burning hot. We also have water with us in case I need to wet my lips, if you will, if my mouth becomes a bit parched. Today, I am sitting down while reading, so if there is a change in my normal reading behavior, it is because of that, but I do not actually have a paper form of this story, and that is why I'm sitting down. That way, I'm not constantly looking down at the screen while trying to speak into the microphone at the same time. Let's bring up the story here. All right. So, without further ado, let's get into tonight's story. Again, this is Killer Kitteh Khristmas by Sean B. Clavin. And with that, let's begin. Tony had loved animals her entire life. Nothing could prevent her from rescuing as many animals as she could afford, and every time one would cross the Rainbow Bridge, there she would be, ready to give another a chance even though it broke her heart. When Sharpie left her, she thought it the end of the world. She always did. There was no love as unconditional as that of a pet, and her preferences were cat. It was Cat. She had four at any given time. At the moment, three, with Sharpie gone. Sharpie being gone was evident in how cold the house felt without her. Mitty, Lizzie, and Winter tried their best to comfort her. It never ceased to amaze her how in tune animals were with their owners. Her babies knew she was in pain and wanted nothing more than to make her feel better. They rested on her chest, on her belly, and on her legs as she lounged on her sofa staring at the table where a photo of her and Sharpie sat. Never one to mope, Tony made her decision then. The best way to honor Sharpie's memory would be to welcome a new stray into their little family. She would go to the pound in the morning and find one suitable for their family and bring him or her home. They knew her so well there, a home check wouldn't even be necessary. It was a cold day, winter was clearly coming, and Tony made sure to wrap up from head to toe. She was a naturally cold person, and the weather crept between the folds of her clothes, found the minute spaces that would expose her, and seeped into her bone deep. She couldn't help the shivers that racked her body as she trudged along the sidewalk towards her car, parked just outside her house. Once inside her vehicle, she turned the temperature up high. She swung around to the back seat to make sure she remembered to put everything needed in the car before she left: cat carrier, treats, and blanket. She was set. She put her safety belt on and started the car. It gave a smoker's lung whine before sputtering to life. "It's just cold, old girl," she said, patting the dashboard fondly. She checked carefully for traffic before pulling out into the road and gradually making her way in the direction of the pound. The pound was both her favorite and most hated place. While she loved to play with all the animals she met, she couldn't stand watching them shut away in their tiny cages, condemned to a prison like existence against their will. Today, however, she wouldn't be leaving at least one cat behind. She already knew the name she had in mind: Snuggles. Now, she just had to find the cat that fit the name. Miley met with her at the front desk, and they chatted idly about the animals' welfare as they walked toward the cattery so that Tony could see who would be the lucky fish, or rather kitty, that would be coming home with her today. She pet each cat and spent a little time with each, checking out their temperament and listening to Miley explain where they come from. The fifth cat caught her attention. She was a Maine Coon and as fluffy as anything. She lay in the corner of the cattery, alone and sulking, and none of the other cats approached her at all. "Who is that cat?" "Mm, she didn't come with a name," Millie explained. "Her family was brutally murdered. Everyone, even the other animals. But she must have been out of the house when it happened because she was unharmed." Tony's heart broke as she listened to Snuggles' story. Yes, this was Snuggles. Tony lowered down to her haunches and held out her hand. "Here, Snuggles," she murmured, and to her, and Miley's surprise, the cat got up and slinked towards Tony, rubbing her face into Tony's open hand as though she had an itch. Gently, Tony wrapped a hand around Snuggles and lifted her up into her arms. Content with the purring cat, she smiled. "This is the one I want," she said. Molly smiled too. "You're always going for the real underdogs, Tony. Come on, we'll put her in your cat carrier, sign off the paperwork, and you can take her home." "Come on, Snuggles," Tony said, despite the fact that the cat had no option, now trapped in Tony's warm embrace. She just meowed softly. Tony pulled up into her driveway and turned around in her seat. "You'll have to stay in my bedroom, away from the others while we get you used to this house. I don't want you running off before I could get you a decent collar," she cooed through the mesh of Snuggles' face. Snuggles did not seem either disturbed or distressed by what she was saying, so she got out of the car and picked up the cat carrier, strolling through her front door and calling, "Mommy's home! Here, kitties!" When they didn't come, Tony simply assumed they sensed the new cat in the house and were in hiding, or they had found nice warm spots to nap. Either way, it would make no difference to her. She carried Snuggles to her room, and after checking Mitty, Lizzie, and Winter were definitely not there, she shut the door and released Snuggles to explore the room. She watched her go from one part of the room to another, sniffing, jumping, climbing, dropping. She clawed under the bed, and Tony couldn't help but lay on her belly to watch her new kitty play. Unfortunately, though, Snuggles turned around and got a fright when she saw Tony's face suddenly appear at the bottom of the bed. She swiped out and managed to scratch open Tony's face. Tony bit her lip, not wanting to scare Snuggles any more than she had. She got up quickly and left the room, making sure to close the door behind her. She went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror to see blood slowly rolling down her cheek like a crimson tear. She cleaned it up and put a plaster on it, scolded herself for being so silly, and went to fix the cats their breakfast so she could get to work on her new book. Here we're going to take a chapter break. As always, I do want to thank you all for joining this reading stream. Hope you are enjoying the story thus far as well as the reading of this story. Let's see. I just took some water, but let's see if the tea is ready. Actually, yes. It's still a bit hot. Normally, I probably wouldn't want my tea this hot. No, actually, this is... Mm. This is the right temperature for tea, honestly. For hot tea, where it's not too hot, not too room temperature, if you will, but it's somewhere in that sweet middle. Erudite has written, okay, this story is lovely and calm, but I know it's a Halloween story and I'm scared. And there's a little emoji with very wide eyes, horrified blushing, and that worry eyebrow face. Well, let's find out if we can scare people more. We are going to go into chapter 2. I forgot which window I need to open up for chapter 2. There it is. And here we go, chapter 2. Tony struggled to get Snuggles used to the house. She was a very playful cat, a kitten at heart, and liked to nibble on Tony's toes and fingers and loved to play rough. Tony eventually thought there was nothing for it and released her into the rest of the house so she could meet the other cats. The first one she encountered was Lizzie, the boss of the house, and Tony expected them to promptly have a fight. Lizzie, however, had other plans and shrieked loudly, streaking away as Snuggles followed slowly, as though hunting prey. Tony laughed. Finally have someone give you what you... Apologies, I read that wrong. Tony laughed. Finally have someone give you what for, hey Liz? She teased, going to rescue Lizzie from Snuggles. When she picked up her tabby cat, she held her to her chest and rocked her slightly, willing her to calm down. Lizzie eyed Snuggles out, and then Tony felt the sharp pain of claws digging into her leg. Tears sprung to her eyes as Snuggle clawed her way up to Tony to be face to face with Lizzie. They each eyed each other out warily, and Lizzie let out a mournful meow as though surrendering her title to Snuggles. Seemingly satisfied, Snuggles thankfully dropped from Tony's leg and continued to explore the house. Tony set Lizzie down, who ran away, and dusted her hands off before wiping her eyes. Teach me to get involved, she muttered as she went to cook herself dinner. It happened every time she prepared a meal. The cats slowly crept out of their various hiding places to meow at her that it was time for something tasty for them first. She didn't know if they liked the way the kitchen smelled when she started to prepare dinner, or if it was her presence in that room at the time of day that triggered them, but they all made their way there. Snuggles was last to come in, and the other cats hissed and backed away from her, letting her sit in the middle of the space. Tony giggled. You don't have to be scared of her, girls. She's new and you'll get used to her. She leaned down and pat Snuggles' head, but the cat had other ideas and promptly swiped at Tony's hand, catching it in her two paws so she could nibble her fingers. Okay, Snuggles, that's enough, she said, pulling her hand away, wincing as Snuggles' claws cut her skin yet again. Let's get dinner out of the way, shall we? She asked, picking up each of the cat's bowls. I think tonight we'll have tuna flavored gravy on your palates, she commented, opening the cupboard to make sure she could make good on her promise. She pulled out 4 sachets of the gravy food she got at the pet store and dumped one in each bowl. Mixing it so it wasn't all one giant lump, she set each bowl down in 4 separate corners so they could eat in peace while she cooked. The pasta was ready when she noticed that the other cats had stopped eating and had left, leaving Snuggles their food to finish up. Tony was torn between saving their food for the morning and just letting Snuggles finish it because she was the new girl. Snuggles looked at her as though reading her mind, gave a soft hiss, and continued to eat. Not one to argue, Tony left her to finish the food as she dished her own and sat at the table to eat. She found her other 3 cats all at the kitchen door, staring at Snuggles like she had the plague. Tony quickly got her phone out and snapped a few pictures, giggling at how human like her cats were behaving, being jealous of the new cat in the house. She posted it to her social media quickly before sitting down and eating. Hissing woke her up. That and the shrieks of what sounded like an animal being torn in two. It was happening just outside her house, and it had woken her up. She looked around. Snuggles and Lizzie were missing. She got up quickly and put her gown on, calling out softly, half asleep, for her missing cats. Going to the front door, she quickly opened it and poked her head out. The light above her, meant to light her small porch, didn't do much for letting her see her front garden, but she could make out a lump of something that shouldn't be there. Judging by the size, it looked like Lizzie was sleeping outside again. She jumped suddenly as something snaked around her legs, and as she looked down, Snuggles gave her the cutest little meow before going back inside to the warmth of the house. Tony called Lizzie a few times, and when her cat made it evident she refused to come in, Tony walked out to get her. It was dark, and she could barely see, but soon enough, she reached her little fluff ball and scooped her up. Lizzie was warm, and Tony could feel that warmth soaking into her clothes as she carried her now oldest cat back inside, kicking the door closed behind her. Something seemed off, though. Tony couldn't quite place her finger on it. Normally, Lizzie would purr when she was in her mother's arms, but it seemed she wasn't in the mood. In fact, it almost felt like she wasn't breathing at all. The warmth Tony had felt was ebbing away, and she paused in the passage in the dark and looked down at the shadowy shape of her Lizzie's head. She shook her head and leaned down to kiss Lizzie's crown when her head simply detached and fell to the floor, rolling a few inches away. Tony's whole body shook, and she could taste the bile rising up from her stomach. She dropped her cat's lifeless body, realizing the warmth she had felt was the blood pouring from her neck as her head had apparently been hanging on. The thought sent Tony into a right state, and she stumbled toward the bathroom, flicking on the light to find herself indeed covered in blood, and with that, she puked on the mirror, the basin, and all over the bathroom. Here we're going to take a chapter break. Hmm. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining this reading stream. I hope that you are enjoying the story as well as the reading of the story. And as always, I do appreciate all the support that this channel and the reading stream receives, whether it is follows or likes, subscriptions, sharing with friends, letting it play in the background. If you are listening to the VOD, once again, I want to thank you as well. I believe all support for the reading stream should be appreciated. Going to do a quick stretch here. There we go. I will say, I am happy that I can read this story, but I'm now starting to think maybe I should invest in printing out stories. Reading from a computer screen is not bad, but seeing that I stare at a computer screen somewhat regularly, it would be bad to have a paper copy instead. But if I had thought about it, I would have prepared it earlier. That is on me. Nevertheless, we are now going into Chapter 3 of Killer Kitteh Christmas. Tony was absolutely heartbroken that some psycho had decided to murder her cat. She cleaned up her bathroom and herself before calling the police and explaining what had happened. The sun had already risen by the time the patrol car left, the police trying their absolute best to console her over her loss, though she could see it in their eyes that they didn't understand how much she loved animals and how much it killed her to lose two so quickly together. The police mentioned it could have been some sort of cruel initiation by local kids. They had seen it before, but this was beyond that. Whoever did this, in Tony's eyes, was an absolute monster, and if they weren't already, they would probably turn out to be serial killers. She had a funeral for Lizzie, opting to bury her amongst the rose bushes in the backyard rather than take her to be cremated. It just felt right. She spoke to her other cats about it, making sure they were okay. Then she said about letting some of her friends know what was going on. They all felt absolutely terrible for her, knowing what she was like, and offered to come over to cheer her up. She thought it might be nice. She could then introduce Snuggles as well. Her friend Bob arrived first. The minute he walked in, he found Mitty and Winter waiting for him near the door. He scooped them each up in turn to play with them before looking at Tony. He then rushed to her and took her in his arms. "I'm so sorry, Tony. There are such sick people in this world." Tony rested her head against his chest, fighting back the tears that threatened yet again to spill. "The police probably won't find who did it," she finally mumbled. "But I am keeping the three cats inside for now, just to be safe." "That's a good idea," Bob said, leading her to the kitchen where Snuggles lay on the countertop, flicking her tail this way and that. "Ah, you must be Snuggles," Bob cooed, reaching out to pet her. She hissed at him, swiping at his hand and scratching his palm open before streaking away. "Are you okay?" Tony asked quickly, rushing to get a paper towel, wetting it and pressing it to Bob's palm. It was his turn to hiss, with pain, and he bit his lip. "Yeah, I just startled her." She's like that," Tony nodded as she spoke. "She doesn't like sudden movement or being startled. She got my face the other day." "So, let's talk while we wait for Lara," he said, sitting down at the counter and watching her pour them each a glass of red wine. "What do you want to talk about?" Tony asked, smiling as she handed his glass over. "Anything happening in your love life?" Bob asked, sipping his glass carefully. By the time Laura arrived, they had discussed everything from Tony's lack of a love life, to work, to dreams, to what she was going to do for Christmas, including who Bob was seeing now. That was Laura. She always ran a tad late because she was helping someone. Today, she had been working at an old age home. And I got stuck because the lady just wanted someone to talk to. How am I supposed to say no to that? She finished, sipping her own wine as she sat next to Bob. I don't know how you do it, Tony said with a small shake of her head. I think my heart would die. It's what I was made to do, Laura said. You know, like you're made to be a writer, or that Bob was made to be an activist and a politician who is going to one day make equality a real thing. She smiled brightly at her friends, always positive. Laura was always the ray of sunshine on the dimmest of days. So what now? Are you going to get a new cat? Laura asked, reaching out to place her hand over Tony's. No, not yet. It still hurts too much, Tony said. But probably next week? She smiled softly. You guys know me too well. It's what we're here for, Bob said, with Laura nodding excitedly next to him. But for now, I do have to go. I have a big speech to give tomorrow on equal rights for marriage, and I still need to write it. He kissed Tony's head and then hugged Laura. I'll see you guys soon. I had also better go, Laura pouted before suddenly perking up. I'll be back next week to crochet with you. Tony smiled. I'll see you then. After doing the dishes, feeding the cats, and having her own dinner, Tony decided against spending the evening writing, and instead, she climbed into bed. Winter and Mitty were no longer sleeping in the room, and she knew she would probably find them lounging about on an armchair in her study. Snuggles was nowhere to be seen, which was strange, since she normally liked to sleep at the end of the bed and nibble on Tony's toes. Content and warm, Tony slowly drifted off to sleep. And here we're going to take a chapter break. Mm, I do like this tea. This is actually really good tea. I feel like maybe I should drink this more during the reading stream. As we all know, or perhaps as you all know, I should say, if you are a longtime listener of the reading stream, you know that I have some teas that are my go tos for the reading stream, and I very much enjoy them. In fact, tonight I am drinking a tea called this here. Let's not cover up the title. Rogue's Revenge. And the ingredients of Rogue's Revenge are rooibos, yerba mate, cinnamon, and ginger. And I can hear you now just saying, my gosh, Taka, that does sound delicious. And I will agree, it does sound and taste very deliciously. Hmm. And you may be saying, Taka, this is my first time on your stream. I have no idea where you could find Rogue's Revenge with the ingredients of rooibos, yerba mate, cinnamon, and ginger. Where do you find such a delicious blend? Well, dear listener, allow me the opportunity to tell you about a very special place. A place located in the Pacific Northwest. A place full of wonderful teas that I know will tickle your fancies. A place in Seattle, Washington. The tea shop called Friday Afternoon. That's right, it is time for our not sponsored. I promise it's not a sponsorship because they don't sponsor me, but we're going to pretend it's a sponsorship. Friday Afternoon. The tea shop in Seattle, Washington. If you go to their website, www.fridaytea.com, you will find a wide variety of teas that I know will tickle your fancies, like Rose Revenge, if you will. Now, I do have my favorites from Friday Afternoon, but tonight, allow me the opportunity to introduce to you a tea that I have not seen on their website before. In the 3 years? Yes, actually about 3 or almost 4 years of doing the reading stream, I have not seen this tea here. So, this tea is called Mexican Mulling Cacao, and it is part of the Charity Collection. There's a whole collection of teas that support charities. In fact, $6 of each 2-ounce packet supports the United Farm Workers, a labor union offering innumerable support pathways for America's farmers, from immigration resources to legal representation to clothing and food drives. The UFW, again, United Farm Workers, is a cultural icon for the Chicano community and has been on the front lines of the labor rights movement for decades. So, if you do happen to go to Friday afternoon or FridayTea.com and see Mexican Molin Cacao, you will be supporting a great cause. Now, this charity blend is a cozy home warming cup of community care. Rich cacao nib, citrus, and warming spices infuse agricultural boldness and strength. Raise a cup of tea in honor and celebration of our farm workers. Your mulling spice blend comes in a 2-ounce pouch, approximately 1/2 cup in volume. This pouch will make 4 batches when prepared as suggested. The ingredients: cacao nib, cinnamon, orange peel, roasted decaf coffee beans, this all 3 words there, dark chocolate, and natural vanilla flavoring. And if you have any curiosities about exactly what's in this dark chocolate, it contains cocoa beans, cane sugar, cocoa butter, and ground vanilla bean. The suggestion for drinking this is simmer 2 tablespoons of spice mix in 1 quart of water for 2 to 3 hours, then strain and enjoy. Spike with a glug of brandy or whiskey if you like. So, if you want to pretend to be a very sophisticated pirate, you can. Now, this tea, I do not see any reviews for it at the moment, but that doesn't mean there will not be reviews. In fact, you can be the very first one to review this. And again, if you want to try a tea like this, or even some of my favorites like Anansi's Web or the Clockmaker? Yes, the Clockmaker tea, you can find them all at www.fridaytea.com. Again, that is www.friday like the day and tea like the drink.com. And again, they do not pay me to do this. They do not give me free teas. They do not take things from me and hold it for briberies or ransom or anything like that. They do not sweet talk me into doing this for free. They do not, well, be quite honest, the only communication I have with them is when I buy tea from them. What I'm saying is, I just like their tea. So consider checking them out. Hmm. Ooh, that was a lot of talking there. But we are still doing well here. And once again, I do want to thank you all for joining this reading stream, whether you're here live or you're listening to the VOD on Twitch or YouTube. I do appreciate all of the support that this channel receives. And if you're enjoying the story so far, again, consider supporting the author of tonight's reading, Sean B. Clavin. On the left-hand side, you will see links to their websites and other ways you can support them. And with that, I believe we are now ready for Chapter 4. With that, let's begin. Winter, Winter, where are you? Here, kitty. Tony looked everywhere she could, but she couldn't find Winter anywhere. She had not seen her since the previous day, and she was starting to get worried that someone had hurt her. She called the pound in the local vet, but with no luck. Alicia at the vet said that Tony shouldn't worry. Winter would turn up soon enough. Hardly reassured by her words, Tony decided to get down to writing. The wind had picked up outside and caused her house to howl as if in pain. She sat in her study, her mind distracted as she attempted to complete the section of the manuscript she was working on. Several times she clicked the screen and dragged up, deleting what she had written because she knew it was utter garbage. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and decided to take a break to make lunch. It was at this point that she realized how cold the house was. She shivered despite the woolen jersey she had on. Donning her boots and thicker jacket, she braved the outside to go get firewood. The fire roared as it came to life, and the heat immediately washed over Tony like a wave. She instantly felt better and decided to put Winter out of her mind. Her cats knew where their home was, and Winter was the one most likely to explore. Tony focused her focus. Tony focused her efforts on lunch instead. Having skipped breakfast to look for Winter, she was now starving. Snuggles came around the corner and gave Tony a loud meow. She bent down, thinking that Snuggles would like a good ear scratch, but instead was rewarded with sharp claws scraping deep into her hand. Hissing, Tony rushed to the sink to run her hand under the cold water. The blood came out thick, and she sighed, wondering if Snuggles would ever adapt to their new home. Maybe this was just her personality, and she should just accept it. Tony smelled burnt food and groaned, drying her hand quickly to pull her macaroni cheese out of the oven. She frowned. It had not even set yet. She glanced around the kitchen, puzzled as to where the smell could be coming from. Worst of all, the smell was acidic, as though hair had been set on fire. Tony gagged slightly and opened the back door to gulp down some fresh air before setting off to find the source of the smell. It was definitely not coming from the outside cold. She walked from room to room, finally going to her study to check if something had fallen into the fire. Kneeling with the poker in hand, the sight that met Tony made her projectile vomit right to her right, spraying her chair and floor with last night's dinner. Mitty, what could only have been Mitty, was cooking in the fire. There was no saving her, and the stench that emitted from the fireplace was horrendous. Tony needed to put the fire out and get her now dead cat out of the house, or the smell would be there forever. Still gagging, she ran and got a bucket of water. Putting the fire out meant water running along the floor, with black soot and pieces of cat flesh pouring out of the fireplace as it overflowed. Tony vomited again into the now empty bucket, her body shaking. After wrapping her hands in 2 plastic bags and putting on a buff to cover her mouth, she finally plucked up the courage, despite the tears rolling down her face, to extract Mitty's body from the fireplace. She carried her cat in a black garbage bag to the backyard, where she buried her next to Lizzie. Then, and only then, did she allow herself to break completely, stripping her hands of the bag and shoving them into the grave. She piled the sand on through gasping tears, as she had now lost her third beloved pet in a short space of time, and right before Christmas as well. Tony wiped her eyes on the back of her sleeve as she cleaned up after herself. Praying for Winter to return safely, she made her way back into the house and opened up all the windows to get rid of the burnt smell. Her macaroni and cheese lay forgotten in the kitchen. Here we're going to take another short break, another short chapter break, if you will. As the little ticker tape at the bottom has said before, if you're listening to the reading stream and you're thinking, my goodness, I would like to have Takanome read my story for everybody to listen to, well, consider sending me a message on Blue Sky. you can find me at the Takonome. Now, I've also told my wife about this. I've told Miss Taco about this, and she believes she may have some people who may be interested. But a good question that she asked was, what type of stories am I looking for the reading stream? Well, first and foremost, it must be a story written by you. This is a no AI art stream, essentially. So, whatever story we read, it has to be written by, well, a human. And we also want to give credit to the human that wrote the story. Additionally, for a second, I guess, requirement for a story to be featured on the reading stream, preferably any work that is fiction. Nonfiction, do not get me wrong, I do like a good nonfiction book, but this stream is for fiction stories. So if you are a romance author, if you're a horror writer, if you like thrillers, if you're sci fi, fantasy, anything of that nature, those stories are welcome. Now, I know there are people who enjoy a very, 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 very spicy story, to which I say it is going to be a coin toss for the reading stream. We want our stories to have, well, a story and not to be simply fan service. So, if you are a writer and you're thinking to yourself, maybe my story could be good for the reading stream, again, as the message says, message me on Blue Sky at the Takonome. And with that, we're going to go into our next chapter. Chapter 5. Tony had never been so despondent the night before Christmas. She had been unable to find Winter, and she had lost her 3 cats. All she had was Snuggles, who seemed to want nothing to do with her at night when she wanted to nibble on Tony's toes. It was extremely frustrating. Tony didn't even want to bring out her Christmas tree, but a visit from Lara made her do it. After all, Christmas was her favorite season, and she had collected a great amount of donations for the pound this year. She would deliver it on Christmas Day. She had all the donations wrapped in under her Christmas tree just waiting for the animals to tear at them, and she couldn't wait. Maybe she would pick up another kitten or two while she was there. She had also taken to drinking a little bit more than she was used to. The loss of her family, for that was how she treated her cats, had taken its toll on her, and Tony often fell asleep on the sofa after drinking deeply from a large glass of wine. The night before Christmas was no different. The wine made her feel warm and fuzzy, but the sofa was uncomfortable, and, after spending the last few nights on it, it had finally given her enough of a cramp in her back to wake her up. Something was on her, and, as she opened her eyes, she smiled at Winter's perfect and sleeping face in front of her, but couldn't understand why it looked so strange. Tony closed her eyes again. He had lost a lot of weight as well because, even though he was laying on her chest and abdomen, she couldn't feel him. She opened her eyes again to stare at his flat face and reached up slowly to stroke him. His face went flatter. She sat up and the pelt of her cat dropped to the floor. She couldn't contain herself. She screamed like a banshee. She dusted herself off as though she had been infected with a disease. Snuggles came to sit next to Winter's pelt and commenced cleaning her bloody claws before looking at Tony and meowing loudly but deeply. It gave Tony the creeps. Snuggles looked up at the tree and meowed again, and Tony looked at it as well. Hanging from the tree like an ornament was the skinned body of her cat, just hanging there, lifeless. Tony shrieked again, feeling sick to her stomach. She needed to call the cops. Whoever was doing this was targeting her and her cats, and she needed to protect Snuggles. She launched herself off of the couch, dashing for her phone. Her cell phone was not where she had left it. She ran to the kitchen instead and picked up the phone hanging on the wall. The line was dead. She looked down to see something had cut through the wire. Whoever was after her was possibly still in the house. Tony went to the back door and unlocked it. She needed to get out of here and alert the police that someone was after her. She got the back door open, but as she was going through it, Snuggles wound around her feet, causing her to trip. She hit her head on the way down and landed half outside of the house, half inside. Dazed, she could feel a weight on her and open her eyes as best as she could to see Snuggles climbing all over her. Snuggles reached her shoulder and sat down, flicking her tail this way and that. "Pitiful human," Snuggles said in a deep, scary voice. "Your soul belongs to me now." She was hallucinating. Perhaps whoever was after her had put something in her house. That was when Snuggles reached up with both sets of claws and swiped repeatedly at Tony's throat. Tony tried to cry out, but she still felt dizzy. She attempted to coordinate her arms to throw Snuggles off, but they felt too heavy. And that was when Snuggles managed to claw through the artery in Tony's throat and sat back, watching her human master bleed out. She cleaned her paws once again, enjoying the taste of Tony's blood before turning around and going back inside to dispose of Winter's body. Here we're going to take a final break before the very last chapter here. Once again, if you are enjoying this story so far, I encourage you to support the author by giving them a follow, purchasing their work, or any other way you can support their work. And with that, we're going into the final chapter. It was a real tragedy that happened here, yes, sir, Officer Michaels commented, standing above Tony's covered body. To be attacked by some wild animal the night before Christmas. Hmm. What do you reckon did it? Officer Johnson asked. Probably a cougar or something, definitely feline. Hmm. Heard she loved cats, Johnston offered. You think a little kitty did this? Michaels laughed, shaking his head. No, sir. Besides, we only found one cat inside. Call her Ray Snuggles. Hmm. What will happen to it? Johnson asked. 'Cause I got a kid at home who wants one. Sure, you can take it, just clear it with animal control, Michael said. Johnston smiled and went inside. Here, Snuggles, he said, holding a hand out. The cat immediately made her way to him, and he scooped her up. Come on, I have the perfect home for you. And with that, that is the end of our story. Once again, I do hope that you have enjoyed the story as well as the reading of the story. And I want to thank you all for joining this or tonight's reading stream. Again, I do appreciate all the support that this channel receives, that the reading stream receives. And honestly, I hope that you enjoy this reading stream as much as I enjoy doing it. And as we close out, I want to remind everyone that we will have the reading stream next Saturday. We will actually be going back to the Clockwork series again, so we will find out what twists Jonas and Mira are getting up to this time. And once again, if you did enjoy this story and you think I would like to read more of this author's work, consider going to their website or going to any web front or web store, I should say, that carries their books. And with that, I will wish you all a wonderful evening, a wonderful day, and with that, I will see you next time. Until then, take care and bye bye.